Yes, am I audible? Okay, okay. Thank you, Obi. So we were discussing the difference between service-oriented architecture versus distributed architecture yesterday, and the next topic which we started was service orientation and object orientation. So in what manner they are different, still we are able to realize the service orientation concepts using the object orientation programming, right? So let us just go through this slide once again. Yesterday we had gone through this. So as we know, what is the focus of service orientation? It is design of services, while object orientation is centered around creation of objects. Fine. That was the first point of difference. The second point is in service orientation, we focus on loosely coupled services, while in object orientation, inherently the objects tend to be tightly coupled to each other. Fine. Next is we define the scope, right? So the boundary of the service can be variable. That is, you can have less number of operations in a service, or you can have more number of operations in a service, right? It depends upon how your logic is partitioned. Mostly, you will be having coarse grain logic. That means you will be having a number of operations in a particular service, right? Then, in case of object orientation, we are always dealing with one object at a time. So, when we say that, what we identify from that concept is the scope is very less, right? Every object works on a small amount of data, while services work on large amount of data, right? So that is the next difference. Okay. We had also seen this point yesterday. In service orientation, we focus on stateless behavior because we will not be maintaining state information in the services. In fact, that information will be embedded as a part of your SOAP messages, right? So we are making the SOAP messages stateful, and due to that, services can remain as stateless as possible. Next, in case of object orientation, we are having stateful behavior. Why? Because every object is a collection of one particular instance of data, and its methods. And when we talk about one particular instance, you can say that it is a stateful behavior. Okay. Next is composition, right? So all of you know inheritance, right? So as a programmer, what do you think? Inheritance should be used or it should be avoided? You have studied that as a technique in multiple languages. So what do you think? Inheritance is a good design approach or it should be avoided ideally in programming? Yes, anyone? All of you know, right? Inheritance has a base class and then you are creating derived classes. Fine. So it gives you reusability. That is true. But what is the problem of inheritance? It is avoided in service orientation. That is correct, right? See, every base class has to be connected to the derived class. All of you agree to this, right? Every base class has to be connected to derived class. So in a sense, you are creating kind of coupling. Yes or no? You are creating a kind of coupling, right? Which we usually don't promote in service orientation, right? So yes, whenever you try to implement the applications using inheritance, the use of that inheritance should be limited. Wherever required, you can use it, no problem. But don't forcefully add inheritance, right? Because unnecessarily, it will increase the dependency. And in turn, you will be making your application coupled, right? So this is also called composition, because composition, what does that concept say? Combining multiple things together. So when we are talking about inheritance, we are actually combining the subclasses with the base class. So it is a way of composition, but that is based on tight connections, tight dependencies, right? While in case of SOA, if you remember that example which I gave you earlier, we have account service, right? Then we have ledger service, and then you have vendor profile. So these services are going to act together to process one invoice, right? These services are going to act together to process any invoice. Okay, so that is why we can say that we are composing three services. We are composing three services, but they will not be connected to each other. They will be calling each other whenever required. So that is called a loosely coupled communication between the services. Are you following this last point? Composition of SOA versus composition of object orientation. Is the difference clear? Right? Yes or no? Are you clear with the difference? What I'm asking is making sense, right? In case of SOA, we want loosely coupled communication, right? In case of object orientation, we have inheritance, so that may lead to tightly coupled solution. Okay. Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Shail, for the reply. Fine. So now, see, we are done with two major chapters, right? We have completed the introduction part from chapter number 1, right, and 3, where we have seen the contemporary SOA characteristics, right? And we had also seen what is SOA, right? But I had kept one topic for the last lecture because that topic was based on what are the benefits of service orientation and what are the myths about service orientation, right? Do you know what is myth? When I say you listen to some myth, right? So what is the meaning of a myth? Right? Can anyone give me an idea? Someone gives you a statement and you say that this is a myth, right? Wrong assumption. That's correct. That's correct, right? So in SOA also, there are some myths going on. Yes, exactly. Maybe people have myths that solve. Yes, exactly. So that statement might seem true, but it is not true, right? So that is a kind of myth, right? So when you are designing an architecture, people with their experience create some statements or define some statements, right? But actually they are myths, right? They have just used their own experience to limited extent, and that is why that statement which they have given might not be holding true for all the situations, right? So that topic I did not cover because I wanted to let you know what is actually SOA, right? How we design services, how we communicate between services, right? And the last one was how we achieve the description mechanism or discovery mechanism, in other words, right? So that I'm revisiting now, right? So again, I'll repeat, chapter 4 is done, right? Chapter 4, we have covered the content, the differences between SOA versus client server, SOA versus distributed architecture, SOA versus hybrid architecture, and SO and OO, right? That was chapter 4. Chapter 5 is also completed. Why? Because in chapter 5, we have seen the concepts of WSDL, right? We have seen types of services, roles of services, right? Those concepts we have seen. We have seen what is structure of UDDI, what is structure of SOAP, right? So all those concepts we all have seen, right? So chapter 4, 5 completed from your textbook. From chapter 3, 3 topics are left. That's what I'll be starting with. The 3 topics are like this: misperceptions. Yes, addition. Yeah, surely I can give you the addition. I think you have seen that cover, right? Which I showed you in the first, right? First lecture. So no matter what edition you are having, right? But you should have that green cover book. Are you having that, Rikin? Service-oriented architecture. That's okay. That's okay. Not an issue. No problem. You can refer to second edition. Chapters are same, right? There is no difference even in the latest edition. Okay. So you can stick to the second edition. No problem with that. Is that fine? Okay. So just map out the topics which are there in this slide. Okay. So the edition that I'm having currently is actually 29th reprint of the book, right, which was published in 2018, right? But if you are having the second also, then also it will be fine, right? No problem with that. If you are not able to find any topic, you can let me know. Okay, fine. I'll help you to find that topic from the textbook. Okay. Yes. So that's why I'm describing you the topics, right? So that even if you are not having the match found in the textbook, you can match with the slides. Okay. And so chapter 4 and 5 we have seen. Chapter 3, 3 topics are left, as I was saying. So the first topic is misperceptions. That's what I was telling you about, what we know as myths, right? Then what are the benefits? More important topic, because as we are implementing SOA, right, we should know what are the advantages of it, right? So benefits, and then what are the mistakes we should avoid while designing SOA, right? Very, very important topic, right? Not as complex, right? But we should avoid those mistakes while implementing our architecture as the SOA, right? So these 3 topics I'll be covering in next whatever minutes we are having, right? So let us continue with that. So I have not followed specifically any chapter order, because I had to first cover the concepts of web services. So that's why I started with chapter 5 first, and then we visited chapter 4, and then I'm going back to chapter 3, right? So chapter 3, 4, and 5 will be covering your contents, which is there in this slide. Okay. Chapter 2 is just having case study description. We have seen that example, Railco and TLS, right? So you can go through those examples whenever you are free, right? Not compulsory to visit that, right? We have already seen that in class as well, right? Chapter 1 is just describing the textbook, right? So if you will not go through chapter 1, that will be okay, right? But chapter 3, 4, and 5, right, we have covered thoroughly. Okay, so let us start with the first misperception, or you can say myths regarding SOA. So read the statement. An application that uses web services is service-oriented. Now, what can you say about the truth of this statement? Seems true, or you will say confidently it is false? I want this to be, interactive, because we are going to discuss a lot of logical topics rather than theory, right? And it's very easy, right? You just have to apply some thought and you will get your answer. Yes, if your application is using a web service, can you say that it is a service-oriented application? No, that's the correct answer. Yes, Harsh, right? What is the reason? Correct, yeah, Shail, yes. So reason is, we have to design the services as per service orientation principles, right? Loose coupling, autonomy, statelessness, right? Discoverability. If you are not using those principles in your architecture, you cannot say that it is a service oriented application, right? Any application can use web services, but that does not mean it is an SOA, right? Right. So you need to place your services. That means your service should be positioned properly, right? Plus, it should be designed according to the principles. Then only you can say confidently that this is an SOA. So this is the first and very popular myth regarding SOA, right? Clear with the first one? I'll be asking for each and every slide, right? Please reply, right? So that we can progress simultaneously, right? Okay, okay. Thank you, Shail, for the reply. Fine. Second is an interesting myth. SOA is just a marketing term used to rebrand the web services, right? So sometimes people feel that some technologies have become older, right? And to promote those technologies once again, this kind of myths are surfacing, right? So suppose some people have said that web services are out of action now. Fine. So this myth has come up due to that. SOA is just a marketing term used to rebrand web services. It is not like that. Fine. Is it compulsory that you have to use web services for SOA? What do you think? Is it compulsory always? Oh, right. What if a better technology comes in future? right? So we will replace web service with that, right? All of you with this, right? If you have a better option in future, right, then definitely you will be replacing the web service technology with any other technology that has come up, right? So it is just right now in, let us say, since 2014-15 onward, right, when SOA has come up in market, right, it has started use of web services since beginning, right? So it is just that you can just see the second line. Contemporary SOA, CSOA, implies the use of web service technology to realize the principles, right? So it is just a platform which we are selecting for implementation. Platform can change in future. So it is not just for marketing web services. That is a myth. SOA is not dependent on web services. Understood this statement, all of you? Yes? Right, so you should be able to identify, right, a statement is true or false. That's why I'm taking time on this. Fine. So that is the essence, right? Okay, fine. Okay, Shail has responded. What about others? Harsh, Janil, I hope you are listening to me, right? Okay, okay. The others, those who are not replying, I hope you are also listening, right? Yes, okay. Yes, Abhi. Okay, okay. Yes, Rikin. Fine. Let us continue. The next myth, right? So don't consider this as a theoretical concept. Consider this as analysis, right? Because you will be working in a real world project situation where you will have to apply your logic not only for programming but also for analysis, right? So these slides will let you know how to do analysis of certain aspect, right? Okay. So let us go for the next one. SOA is a marketing term used for rebranding distributed computing with web services. One more term we are adding. As we know that DIA has some problems, right? Distributed architecture or distributed computing has some problems. So SOA has not come up to hide those problems, right? Or SOA is not something which is going to just rebrand or re-advertise your distributed computing or distributed architecture, right? So this is popularly known as false SOA syndrome. Most of the people in industry have this syndrome, right? They feel that if I am using distributed architecture right now, and if I design web services on top of that, right, then it becomes SOA. Is that SOA? Designing web services as wrapping the as a wrapper for your component based applications or distributed computing? It is not, right? Because that creates which kind of architecture? It is hybrid web service architecture. It is not called SOA, right? Because what is missing? We have not redesigned the logic. We have not redesigned the logic. We have not divided the logic into proper parts, right? There is a lot of dependency. There is no standardization. You are using proprietary protocols and so on, right? So there are a lot of issues, right, that you need to handle. So service-oriented architecture is similar to DIA, but we cannot say that it is a re-advertisement of distributed architecture. It is altogether a new concept. Fine. Actually, it has been introduced to replace or solve the problems of distributed architecture. It was not using standardized communication. It was using high coupling, right? So to replace that, we have designed such principles and technologies that can solve it. Okay, so this is a biggest myth about SOA. That's why it is known as false SOA syndrome. False SOA means incorrect SOA. Clear? Clear with this one? Yes, at least respond someone. Okay, fine. Thank you, Shail, again. Okay, so this is the next one. Let us go for next one. Again, a very, you can say, simple myth to understand. SOA simplifies distributed computing, right? So whatever problems you are facing in distributed computing are solved by SOA. We know that, right? But can we say that the complexity of administration or complexity of the architecture is reduced when you use SOA? No, that's correct. Right. Distributed computing has a problem like, as I discussed earlier, it has tight coupling, proprietary communication protocols, right? Yes, we are replacing them with standard protocols. We are using loosely coupled communication using UDDI. All that is true. But do we have to do a lot of research to achieve that? Yes or no? Or a lot of background knowledge you must have regarding SOA if you want to implement it? Yes or no? The answer is common for both the questions. Do we have to do a lot of research? First question. Second question, do we have to learn SOA specifically, that how we can implement it? Right? So as far as complexity is concerned, SOA is actually more complex than the DIA because we are introducing standard communication. And see, whenever there is standard communication, you need to check everything. You need to tick every box of your system, right? That is it supporting standard communication? Is it supporting standard protocols? If no, then you will have to rethink. Fine. So that is why I'm saying that a lot of research is required before you move to SOA. Or if you transit from any architecture to SOA, you need to think and analyze the system in detail. Shail, would you agree with this now? Yes? Okay. Yeah. So we have said that we have to achieve loose coupling. Okay, fine. Understood, right? We have said that we require autonomy, we require statelessness. But do you think, is it easy to achieve with the programming challenges which we are having, right? Yes. Do you think is it easy to achieve those principles? It's good and easy to just say it. Practically, it is difficult, right? So that is why there is a challenge, right? So SOA actually does not simplify distributed computing. It is not going to reduce the burden, right? Burden is going to remain same, but what is the advantage we are getting? We will be having lot of reusability, right? The maintenance of the systems will be very good. You can easily maintain it, easily change them, right? So quality is going to improve, right? You are going to improve the communication medium. You are going to improve the communication protocols, right? So a lot of advantages we are getting, but at a cost. Do some research and then have rigorous administration. Then only SOA can be achieved. So it never simplifies distributed computing. Clear with this one? Yes? Okay. Thank you. I can see more responses. That's good. Fine. Next, application with web services. Understand this statement. An application with web services that also uses WS star extension is service oriented. For example, if you design, let us say, a university management system, right? University management system with web services. So you might have the components like, accounts module, you might have the student management module, you might have faculty management module, and so on, right? So in that situation, under this design mode, right? If I'm using WS security, right? If I'm using WS security, or I'm using WS reliable messaging or RM, which we call as, right? So just by using this second generation standard, I hope you remember, these are called second generation standards, WS star, right? Where star is replaced with any of the terms like security or reliable messaging, right? So if you are just adding those standard to your architecture, can you classify that as an SOA? There are two answers, yes and no, because first of all, you need to check, right? If you are saying yes, then what you need to check? That are you following all principles, all 8 principles of SOA, right? Is your logic properly divided? Right. So if these two questions are also yes, then we can say that it is service oriented. Are you following this? Right. The main thing is principle. Everything revolves around those principles: autonomy, loose coupling, statelessness, right? All those. Fine. Composability, discoverability. If those are absent, then no matter whatever you are using, right? It is the latest standard that you are using, or does not matter, right? Whatever it is, but it is not an SOA, right? So just using WS star extensions or WS star standards does not make it service oriented. Important thing is how the architecture itself is designed, right? So that is the important aspect over here. Fine, clear with this? Okay, good, fine. One more myth that programmers are having, right? We as a programmer might have this myth, right? Let us understand. If you understand web services, that means if you are good at programming web services, you won't have a problem building SOA, right? This is the biggest myth programmers, for programmers, you can say, right? Yes, if you are having web service knowledge, if you are good at coding web services, hosting those web services, plus you are good at designing the client applications, right? It will be helpful, definitely, right? But that is not enough. Do you agree with this? Only having knowledge of web service technology is not enough. So what is missing? What is missing? Yes? What aspects are missing? Can anyone tell me? Yes, Shail, Chanil, Love, those who are responding, Harsh. Can you give me one aspect which is missing as a programmer, even though you might be a best web service designer, right? Until you know the, yes, documentation, that's correct. Or until you know the theory behind SOA or the concepts of SOA, it won't be possible to implement and realize that clearly. Are you following? Right? So that is the purpose of covering this subject as a part of theory also. Otherwise, we would have just taught you the WCF service and those APIs, RESTful APIs, right? But as you require the details, that's why we are covering all these things. Fine. Okay. So service orientation principles are technology agnostic. That means they are independent of the programming technology. Fine. We should know the principles. That is one thing. And once you understand principles, if you are aware with web service technology, right, then you can design the best architecture possible. I'll again repeat. If you know details of service orientation principles, plus you are good at designing web services, then it is fine, no problem. But having a partial knowledge just of web services is not sufficient. Okay. So what we require is the last line you can see, realizing contemporary SOA or latest version of SOA requires a special skill set or separate skill set, which is well beyond the web service technology. Okay. So if you understand web services very well, then also you will find moving to SOA difficult if you don't have knowledge. Okay. Clear with this one? Yes. Okay. So next one. See, these are such topics. Once you read the statement, you won't have to read it once again. I hope you are able to realize, and I'm giving you such insights in every statement. So if you focus in class, you would have to read it again, right? you can identify statements truth or false based on the statement itself, right? Once it is given, either in MCQ mode or in descriptive mode, no matter. Fine. But make sure that you understand the basics of each and every statement. Okay. So that is important over here. Are you all following this, right? Good. Okay. Okay. Fine. One more, you can say obvious myth. Once you go SOA, everything becomes interoperable. That means what this is trying to say, if I'm implementing SOA in my system, everything in my architecture is interoperable. That means you can have communication between all types of platforms, all types of technologies. Is it completely true statement? Is it completely true statement? See, I'm saying completely true. Yes, it is partially true. So this statement can be true under one condition, right? So you can see that answer. This goal is attainable. That means you can consider this statement as true, provided you have done a lot of analysis, lot of research, lot of investment, obviously, right? You have to design a separate architecture, so a lot of investment is going into it, right? And the most important thing, everything in your architecture is a standard. Nothing is using customized standard, right? No programmer has followed their own method of programming. They have used the standards everywhere, right? So if everything is designed based on standards, then only everything can become interoperable, right? If even one aspect of the system is customized based on your logic, based on the programmer's logic, then it will not be 100% interoperable. Are you all following this particular misperception? Right. So what is required is complete standardization, and that's why we have been talking about XML schema. We have been talking about the DTDs, right, or even WSDL, UDDI. So all are standards, right? If everything you are using is a standard, yes, you can say it is a true statement. Okay. Fine. So this ends the discussion on misperceptions. Are you all clear to this? Right? How many of them we have covered? Let us see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right? There are total 7 misperceptions. Right? You can go through the slides once again before the exam. If you have any query, let me know. Right? Are you fine with this? Up to this? Yes. Can we go for the next one? Yes. Okay. Let us go for the next topic. Benefits of SOA. Right. So after implementing SOA, it is after sowing the seeds, you will be, getting the fruits. That is the benefit which we are going to get. So what are the benefits which we get using SOA, which are not there in other architectures? So that is why this is important topic, right? You should be able to compare. What are the benefits? Yes, we are investing a lot of cost. We are investing a lot of effort, analysis. But on the top of that, what are the benefits which we are getting? So first is, it provides improved integration. That means if you want to combine multiple services together, right? If you want to combine multiple services together, it will be very easy. And suppose we have seen that account service, right? So if you design an account service, which is, let us say, generic in nature, so can you reuse that same account logic for other projects that you take up? If it is designed in generic manner, can you reuse that for other projects also? Yes, right. So that is also an example of integration, right? You can integrate your applications in a better way, right? But for that, what is required? We have to use standardized communication, standardized web service descriptions, right? And standardized services. Okay. Second advantage is we can have intrinsic interoperability. That means interoperability will come by default. It will be a part of your solution, right? Because if everything is standardized, you can talk with Java application, you can talk with .NET application, you can talk with a Python application, right? So it is possible. Okay, we are achieving good integration capability, plus we are providing default interoperability. Clear with this one? First benefit, right? Again, there are 5 to 6 points we need to discuss over here, right? So make sure that you understand. Okay, reuse is again by default. Reusability comes as a default. Why? Because every service is going to be more or less independent, or you can say autonomous, right? Every service is going to be stateless in nature, fine. So if these two conditions are satisfied, you can reuse that service anywhere, right? That same logic can be reused, fine. So we are focusing on reuse in two ways. By designing reusable services, we are fulfilling immediate requirements. That means we are implementing that solution for current project. Plus, we can also reuse the same logic for future requesters. That is what is reusability, right? Reusability is not for current situation. If you support reuse in future also, then only it is called reusability. Fine. So building services to be inherently reusable, that means by default reusable, results into increased development effort. Yes or no? If you try to design every service to be as generic as possible, will it increase the development effort? Obviously, yes, right? But in the end, you are going to, get the advantages, right? Plus, you have to use the standards. You need to use standard protocols, fine. But in future, what advantage you will be getting is it will lower the cost of effort, right? It will lower the cost and effort of building service-oriented solution, right? So that is the benefit which we are getting, right? So are you clear with this particular slide? Yes? Okay, okay. Okay, let us continue with the next one. So the next benefit which we have is if you implement SOA, you will be getting streamlined architecture and solutions. Streamline means standardized again, right? So everything is standardized. So what you are having finally is highly optimized environment, highly optimized automation environment. As everything is standardized, you won't have too many bugs, right? You won't have too much administrative overhead, fine. So by doing or by using the standards, what are the advantages which we are getting? That is mentioned in the last point. We can get reduced processing overhead and reduced skill set requirement, fine. So that is again biggest benefit which we get, fine. So if we follow standard design specifications, then due to that, we can reduce the overhead in future. Okay, fine. This is a very important advantage. I have already said earlier, that is, even if you have a legacy application, can we or do we need to throw it away if we have to move to SOA? If we are having a legacy application, all of you know legacy application, right? That is written in a very old programming language. Let us say VB, or let us even say C, right? So do we need to throw it away? Yes or no? We should not throw it away. So what is the solution? If you want to move to SOA, keeping legacy as it is, what we should, or what kind of services we should design? Remember that term which I discussed earlier, I think 2 lectures ago? Yes, the answer is there in this slide, right? So we are having adapter kind of mechanism, right? And due to that, you will be hiding your legacy, That is one benefit. Plus, the adapter service will have a generic interface or a standard interface. So it can be, or you can say it will be using XML, right? So it can talk with any application. So adapter's job will be what? It will read the request from legacy. It will read the request from legacy. It will convert into XML and then pass on to the requester or provider. Pass on to the other side, we can say that, right? So again, whenever, yes, don't you think at one point you have to rewrite other technology if trade-offs are huge? Yes, Preet, I agree with you. If you are, or let us say, if the technology itself is not designed in a better manner, I would prefer rewriting it. I agree with you, right? But what if it was written in a well designed manner whenever it was designed, right? Then can we still get it along with our new application? I hope you would agree with this, right? Yes, so yes, I agree. You have to check how that system is designed. If the legacy application is a highly coupled solution, it might be producing a lot of bugs in future. Definitely, I would not go for adapter services. I would recommend to the client that you design a new architecture, right? I hope you are pointing to that point, right? Yes, please. So yes, you have to check. You have to check what is the structure of the legacy, how it is behaving. Then only you think about writing adapters. Because again, see, right after writing adapters, if you find that the system is throwing a lot of bugs, not working properly, then ultimately your effort would be wasted. Yes, agreed. So yes, you have to analyze this in detail, right? Okay, thank you for the question, right? So next, if you design adapters, right? If you say that your system is good, it is going to hold, right? Then if you design adapter systems, due to that, integration cost is reduced. Why? Because I don't have to write new application completely from scratch, right? I just have to write the adapter. Okay. So the cost and effort of integrating legacy with contemporary solution is reduced, right? Because adapters are designed in a standard way. Fine. So that's why if you are interested in this kind of programming, you can search for this kind of pattern. I'll just name that. Okay, that in chat box. There is a design pattern called adapter design pattern, right? Which ensures actually that you are creating adapters on the top of existing application, right? So how to make that adapter generic? That design pattern gives you an idea how to make that adapter generic so that you don't have to change it often. So you can simply Google for this what is adapter design pattern. You will get a class diagram of that pattern and you will get a solution how it can be implemented, right? So whenever you are free, please go through this, right? Because see, as a programmer, you should know design patterns. We don't have that in our syllabus, but that does not mean you will not be requiring that, right? Generally, whenever you will join the companies, right, after your placements, they will be using standard design patterns for programming. So they will be training you on them. But it's good that before you start training, you have the knowledge of them, right? So this is actually a very broad topic, design patterns. You can search for that. Many tutorials are available on YouTube, or many tutorials are available in websites like Tutorial Point. I advise you that you go through this once during the vacation time, right? Would you do that, right? Whenever you are free, right? If you like programming, you will definitely like this, right? So there are standard ways of programming that is given by design patterns, right? Adapter is one of them. Okay, fine. So I just moved to a sideline topic, but I hope it will be helpful to you, right? So even if we are implementing adapters for legacy, then also SOA will be beneficial, right? Because we don't have to throw away the legacy application. We don't have to write a completely new application, right? So that is why investment made in legacy will not be thrown away. That is what this advantage says. Are you clear with this now? Leveraging legacy investment, right? Okay. Let us go for the next one. Focused investment of on communication infrastructure, right? As we know, we are using a standard communication framework like SOAP, right? Or even if you are using REST-based web services, you will be using JSON-based communication, right? JSON is again a standard, right? So anyways, if you rely on standard, then it is going to be useful because you can make your applications interoperable and you can talk with different platform applications, right? When you will start learning ASP.NET Web API, at that time you will learn about JSON request and responses, right? So anyways, whether you are using SOAP or REST, right? Communication infrastructure, if it is standard, you can get better efficiency of your system, right? So SOA can centralize inter-application, that means within the application, and intra-application, that means across the application, as a part of standard infrastructure. So wherever we communicate, we talk in standard. Wherever we communicate, we talk in standard. So that is where the benefit lies. Clear with this one? There is a cost involved, right? We have to invest on the communication framework because you have to do a lot of processing, pre-processing, post-processing of your data, which is received. But that is going to give you benefits like reusability, minimum coupling, right? So that is there. Fine. Okay. SOA gives you best of breed alternative that we have, I think, found up till now. We have tried to compare the SOA with client server. We have tried to compare SOA with distributed architecture. And the last one was SOA with hybrid. Do you feel that SOA is a notch better than every architecture? Yes or no? It is definitely better, right? In one or the other senses than the past architectures, right? So it is a best of breed technology. That's what we can say. Best of breed means whatever breeds we are having out of that, you are having the best option, right? So even if the requirements might change in future, you will be able to accommodate changes, right? Because we are using everything standardized, everything is properly partitioned. So that is why you are going to, changes will be easy. You can read the first line. IT departments are frequently required to push back and limit or even reject the request for changes, right? Because whenever you make a change, if your system is highly coupled, not standardized, you will face a lot of problems. Yes or no? We have seen this topic in software engineering also, right? The maintenance becomes costly, right? Maintenance becomes costly. In SOA, we are using standard, everything is a standard. So that's why there won't be a problem, right? So we can proudly say that we are having the best option out of all the architectures, right? It is not that in future a new architecture won't surface, but SOA principles will remain, right? Okay. The last of this is organizational agility, right? So, can you tell me what is meaning being agile? Being agile. Yes. What is meant by being agile? Being fast. That is the normal meaning, right? But fast in what sense? Yes, you can say that leopard is agile, right? But agile in sense of running, right? What about software? In what sense we have to be agile? For business development, okay. For performance, correct. Yes. Yeah. So for development and performance, you can say that. So basically, you should be able to accommodate changes as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. Are you following this? Whenever change request arises, you should be able to deliver the next version of the product as soon as possible. That is what we mean by the agile concept, right? You remember that Scrum model that you studied? You are having daily stand-up meetings, right? And after the daily meetings, your doubts will be resolved so that you can quickly, solve the problems. So how quickly you can respond to situations? What if things break in order to maintain agility? Yes, so we need to strike a balance, Preet. Agreed with you, right? And that is why we have the standards like Scrum, right? So you can't, maintain your own methodology to maintain agility. We have to use some standard methodology to be agile. And the classical example of this is Scrum, right? I hope you have read the documentation of Scrum in past as well, right? After studying software engineering, because Scrum is the most widely used model nowadays, right? So, and whenever you will join any company, you will be working with any of the Scrum cycle or as a Scrum team member, right? It is highly likely, right? So yes, we should not let the things break, right? And to avoid that, we should stick to some standard procedures, isn't it, Preet? And Scrum gives you the solution for that, right? Yes. So the cost and effort to respond to changes will be reduced if your architecture is standardized again. So everything, see, I'm talking about standard since beginning of this class. If everything is standardized, then there will be less maintenance, less efforts in development, right? Everything is good, fine. So these are called benefits of SOA. Why common benefits? Because these are general benefits, right? So we target to achieve all of them. But if you achieve 90% or even 80%, you can say that you come up with a good solution, right? So are you clear up to this? Common benefits, right? Now this is interesting convention which you can see on this slide. What we should avoid, that will be my last topic before this sessional, right? What mistakes we should avoid while designing SOA. So common pitfalls. Pitfalls means don't fall over there, right? So that is we should avoid. Fine. So let us go through these points in the remaining time. If you are building SOA like distributed architecture, then beware. That means you have to divide your logic properly. You should not use RPC based communication. You should use SOAP based communication. You should not use local standards. You should use the standards like SOAP, XML, WSDL, right? So don't design your architecture just like DIA, right? It is different. So you need to think differently. Following this, first one, right? Avoid the technologies which you are using for DIA. That's what this slide says, okay? Not standardizing SOA, very important. As I have been saying in since beginning, if you don't use standards, future integration can be costly and fragile. So make sure that you are following standards everywhere, no matter what you are implementing, right? Because see, what is a habit? Sometimes programmer might think that I should not, invest my time and effort in learning a standard. Instead of that, I will design my own method and then I'll implement the solution. That seems correct, right? Isn't it? Programmers, his own intuitions might say that, right? But in future, that might fail, right? So that is why we are saying that we should use standards. Clear with this one? Not standardizing the SOA. Okay. Not creating a transition plan. Very biggest mistake that you can avoid. If you are moving from legacy to SOA, moving from client server to SOA, moving from DIA to SOA, have a proper plan, do some research, then only start. It should not be like that from the first day you start implementing web services. A lot of planning has to go in background, right? So transition plan means moving to SOA requires some planning, right? So that is this slide saying, right? Not starting with XML architecture, right? As you all know, in contemporary SOA as well as in primitive SOA, everything is based on XML because it is widely accepted standard. It is well tested standard. Okay. It can give you robust applications. It can give you interoperability. Fine. So if you ignore XML from your architecture, then it won't be an SOA. Okay. XML has to be there. Okay. Clear with this one? Fine. Okay. Not understanding performance requirements. See, you have to do all those operations like serialization, deserialization, parsing, right? So if you ignore those aspects, right, every time you receive a message, that message has to be converted into some other format, right? So if you take a lot of time in doing that, right, that conversion, ultimately your architecture will be lagging behind. Yes or no? Pre-processing and post-processing that we are doing, right, with the SOAP message. So we should focus on that first. That is, I'm going to do a lot of processing of my data. So is my architecture capable or is my hardware capable to handle that, right? If you don't analyze that, ultimately you will be designing a good architecture, but that is working very slow. That won't be accepted, right? So avoid this. Fine. Not understanding web service security. Very important point. Mostly we use SSL, right? Secure socket layer. But secure socket layer can secure the message when it is transiting in the network. When it is transiting in the network, that means it is being sent. But when the message is at intermediary service, is it secured by SSL? When the message is received by intermediary service, is it secured by SSL? The answer is no, that's correct. Because SSL only provides security during its transmission, not when it is residing with the intermediary. What if some wrong intermediary service intercepts your message and it can fetch the account details? Isn't it possible? Right? Yes or no? So rely on message level security. Don't rely on only SSL. Right? So that's what we'll be learning after this sessional. After this sessional, we'll be starting with a new set of topics where we will cover all these topics like addressing, reliable messaging, right? Security, all those aspects, right? So it is going to be interesting again, right? Okay. Not keeping in touch with latest development. Fine. So SOA has to use latest technologies, obviously, because it is a new framework, right? So to make it efficient, we should be using the new programming languages, right? So we should be in touch with latest technologies. That's what this slide says, right? So there it ends for the first session. I've already uploaded the slides. If you still have any doubt, I'm always reachable, right? You have my email ID, okay? Anywhere, if you have doubt, you can contact me. Is that fine, right? So all the best for the sessional exam, right? Anywhere, if you have any doubt, you can contact me. Okay, let us end this session. Have a good day ahead.